to the question of whether a stay abroad program can actually have an impact on writing skills. And let's start by defining what a stay abroad program is. And it's just a program that allows a student to live in a foreign country and attend a foreign university, with the Erasmus Plus program being the most representative example here in Europe. Before starting, I'd like to say that this is part of an ongoing PhD dissertation, that it's in a very early stage, I must say, but the motivation of the study was the different ways in which universities across Europe approach their study abroad options when it comes to language students specifically. So if we take the example of Spain and the UK, for example, especially historically speaking, Spanish language students at university can choose to go on Erasmus or not, but it's not mandatory, whereas in the UK it is. In Spain, traditionally, stay abroad programs are shorter and the options are more limited. Of course, things have been improving in recent years, but this has been the case. As we were saying, in the UK, every language student must go abroad for a period of 1 year. And they don't only have the Erasmus option, they can also do a work experience, or they can decide to be language teachers at primary and secondary schools, but they definitely need to spend 2 semesters abroad. And they could even choose to do so in 2 different countries. So this has been the case up until now, because as you all know, very recently, due to the political changes brought by Brexit, Erasmus is no longer going to be an option, and universities are posing the question of whether stay abroad experiences are really that important. There is a lot of debate going on at the moment, and universities, just want to find an answer to whether students really need to go abroad in order to master a language, or whether this environment could be replicated at home or could be replaced by a different option. The answer to this question, of course, is very complex, and there are many aspects that need to be taken into consideration. But one of the most important ones would be the fact that learning is dependent on particular contextual conditions. And in this sense, Batson differentiates 2 aspects of contextual engagement. One of them is the communicative context, and the other is the learning context. So when it comes to the communicative context, students use the second language to take part in social and interpersonal functions, and they have to face the affective factors required for this type of interactions. Whereas in the learning context, input and outputs are shaped by a teacher so that learners focus on form and take risks to improve their language skills. So with these 2 contexts in mind, we can make the difference of 3 different types of learning contexts. First of them, and the most common one, especially in Spain, would be the at-home setting, in which we have a formal language classroom in the L1 country. And out of the 2 contexts that we just had a look at, only the learning context would apply in this case. The second one is a hybrid context, and it's the intensive domestic immersion. Here, students study second language in an L1 setting, but they have to speak the second language exclusively, at least in theory. In this case, both the communicative and the learning context apply, but the result is not entirely natural. And finally, we have the study abroad setting, and this is when students move to the second language country and they are exposed to both formal instruction and the target culture. And definitely in this third case, both the communicative and the learning context, as have been described before, would apply. And saying it like this study abroad context sounds very ideal, and of course it has many benefits, and for many years there have been many authors supporting the idea that a study abroad program actually is very beneficial when it comes to language gains. And they have used many arguments, the most important ones being, for example, the fact that long-term in-country residence provides the ideal environment for second language acquisition, also the fact that stay abroad provides higher exposure to the second language, in addition to multiple opportunities to produce output. Students retrieve the second language knowledge acquired more efficiently because second language exposure is intense and it's also continuous, as opposed to having relatively long intervals between second language learning opportunities, which would be the case in the at-home setting, for example. Students also practice bidirectional listening during daily communicative encounters in stay abroad settings, which provides them with the informal language knowledge that typical at-home settings seldom offer. Students, it's been proved that students retain proficiency gains acquired during the study abroad for up to 12 months. And recently, many authors have brought attention to the fact that it's actually the combination of stay abroad with preceding and following formal instruction that most benefits second language acquisition, rather than the effect of each context individually. Having said that, however, in the last 2 decades, there have been a few authors that have been questioning the real effectiveness of a study abroad program. And they have mentioned facts such as the fact the students are tempted to speak in their mother tongue when they are abroad because it just enables fast communication and it also creates a bond with their peers. We also need to take into account that not all learners make the most of the opportunities that study abroad offers, and whereas some experience less difficulty in integrating within the second language community, others hardly ever engage in second language interaction. Also, the opportunities for outward production might not be as frequent as we thought because of the passive component of the study abroad programs. For example, listening to lectures, watching television, spending time by themselves, etc. Another important factor is the fact that native speakers, are not language professionals in most cases, and the feedback they provide is usually inadequate or non-existent. And finally, we need to draw attention to the fact that poor preparation when it comes to language skills and language learning strategies on the part of students hinders second language acquisition. And if we focus our attention now to writing skills, it is surprising that previous research is scarce, it's very controversial, and it's also inconclusive. It's scarce because most of the studies conducted have focused mainly on speaking skills, and they have forgotten about the rest of skills. And many authors have argued that it's due to the difficulty of designing reliable assessment tools to evaluate writing gains during the study abroad program. The results are controversial because they are sometimes positive and sometimes they are negative, depending on what it is assessed and how it is assessed. Language gains acquired by learners could be both overestimated and underestimated. And finally, they are inconclusive because there are many obstacles when it comes to describing or studying the different phenomena. There are weaknesses in the methodology used in some of these studies. For example, the lack of a control group or the use of only test scores to assess language gains. And just to say an example, this is a table with the most relevant studies on the effects of a study abroad on writing skills in language students. As you can see, they are all very, very recent. There aren't that many studies, as we mentioned before, and we can also see some differences in the settings in general. So whereas some of them only focus on the study abroad experience, others do have an at-home setting, an at-home group to compare results, and a couple of them also have a cohort of native speakers to assess language gains. When it comes to participants, some of them are English native speakers, both from North America or the UK, and they are learning French, but we also have Japanese students who are learning English, or Catalan and Spanish bilingual students that are learning English as well. Another aspect that is very important here as well and plays a crucial role is the length of stay. And in these studies, as we can see, the range is really, really different, and we have length of stays of as little as between 6 and 11 days to as much as 3.5 years. And as we mentioned before, results are controversial because in some cases there hasn't been a lot of difference between the at-home group and the stay-abroad group, so the language gain didn't really differ, but in some cases some considerable gains in writing have been documented. We also, some studies also include ideas that stay abroad programs are better or are superior when it comes to writing strategies and writing styles, if not writing fluency at all. And the most recent study also pointed to the fact that there might be a difference when it comes to absolute and relative gains between adults and children. So as we mentioned before, there aren't many studies. The results are very inconclusive. There are many reasons that could explain this, and one of the most important ones is the one that King Ginger suggests, and it's the fact that interpretive difficulties occasion when study abroad is understood as a unitary variable with all student participants assigned to the undifferentiated category of learner. Of course, every individual is different, and we cannot just take for granted that they were all exposed to the exact same conditions when they were participating in their Erasmus program or their study abroad program. And one last thing that we also need to take into consideration is, as we were saying, the individual differences. There are many aspects that could be studied, but the most important ones would be the proximity between the student's mother tongue and the second language, the level of proficiency that the student had before they went to their study abroad program, the previous knowledge of all the languages, as we mentioned, the length of stay, and also the living arrangements. And finally, the aspect that is of highest interest to us would be the pre-departure preparation. Because poor preparation when it comes to language skills and students' lack of knowledge about language learning strategies has been proved that hinders second language gains. This is, of course, on part of the students, but it's mainly on part of the teachers, and we all need to make an effort to try and avoid or try to bridge this gap. So with all of this in mind, in this PhD dissertation, we have the aim of analyzing the impact of a study abroad experience on language gains and creating a corpus. Out of the results that we get, the participants that we will be using are Spanish translation students that are studying English as their second language and who are going abroad on Erasmus. And we'll have three groups. First group would be the students that decide to stay in Spain in the at-home setting. Then we'll have a group of students going to an English-speaking country. And finally, we'll have a group of students going on Erasmus, but to a country in which English is not an official language, but will potentially be used between peers as a lingua franca. As the methodology, we'll have two tests, one that will be administered right before they go on Erasmus, and then again when they come back, and a questionnaire that will be circulated halfway through their stay to assess individual differences mainly. And our expectation is that This outcome will be of use to language teachers when preparing students for their experience abroad, and also to study abroad advisors in guiding and monitoring students during their stay abroad.
Angela, 2-3 minutes max.
Yeah, I'm done now. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you very much for your interesting and useful, very useful paper. And now we have 5 minutes for questions, comments. You can do this by chat, and if you need, I can. Yes, Paco, ¿puedo desactivar yo el silencio de todos o no?
¿Cómo?
Si alguien quiere preguntar a viva voz, ¿puedo desactivar yo el silencio?
Como tú veas. Si quieres que lo haga en el chat o que lo haga... Si quieres darle la opción de hablar, tienes que dársela tú.
Sí, yo no. Any question?
Oh, yeah, I don't know if you can hear me.
José Luis.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Hello. So, Angela, yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting project, of course, trying to understand that, like the culture of the other country, of course. I don't know if you included that, besides let's say, just learning the language, was the cultural component included in this, or are you thinking of, let's say, including that as in the future?
It's not included right now, but it's definitely on my mind, and in the future, for sure, it will be part of further research, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I was just like thinking sometimes, like, just including, let's say, language, of course, it's the most important, let's say, component, but then you're like, okay, trying to include, let's say, some other aspects as well. I think but I think
one goes with the other, so you cannot ignore it. I mean, of course, in this particular study, it's not going to be one of the main focus of attention, but it will definitely be in the future.
Yeah, and of course, trying to measure that is going to be difficult as well.
It definitely will be, yes, no doubt.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, thanks a lot.
More questions? Nothing more? Sir.
Can I speak? Did you hear me?
Yeah.
Actually,
okay.
it's not part of this question. Part of it also is my comment. As I am a foreign language learner, I learn English by myself in my country. So even the writing skill by myself in my country, and what I'm saying that means the country environment is very important. Taiwan is very international environment. That's why I can access every resource to get better as I can. But about the French language, I don't have this resource in my country, so I have to go abroad in France to learn not only speaking speaking context, but also writing skill. And like you mentioned that, because I'm question about you say you have 3 type of category students. Two kind of students are going abroad. How long are they staying in the other country, please?
They in these particular studies, they will be staying for 1 semester.
1 semester. Because for personal, my experience writing skill in 1 semester for it's not enough. I didn't get how to write when I know how to speak French before coming France, but it takes 1 or 2, 3, 4 years to learning better. But speaking skill is faster than writing. Okay, this is part of my comment about share my experience.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is probably the reason why most of the studies in this kind of environment focus on speaking, because it's probably a bit easier to assess for many different reasons. And well, in this particular case, I completely agree with you. 1 semester is not enough to perfect writing skills, but we also need to take into account that these are translation students, so they are aware, exactly. So they're not just any kind of learner, and this will be happening on their 3rd year at university. So they will have been exposed to 2 years of formal training And that includes writing skills, of course, before they go abroad.
Yeah, totally agree with you. Thank you.
Yes, other than that, of course, I agree with you completely.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we have to end here. And
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Angela. I will pause. So let's move on to the next presentation, to the next paper presented by José Luis Poblete, Carlos Velozo, Néstor Singer. And this paper with the title Data-Driven Learning for the Language Teaching and Translation Studies, Preliminary Results from a Chilean case. They are from the University of Santiago de Chile. Thank you.
Exactly. So thank you very much. So my name is José Luis Poblete. I'm representing, of course, Carlos and Néstor for presenting in another panel at the same time. So welcome and thank you for being here. So, well, I'm going to explain, as Larissa mentioned, this is the name of our presentation. It's DDL for Learning, Language Teaching and Translation Studies. So we're going to show some of our results from the experience of using this methodology in Chile. So let's say, as I said, the objective of this talk is to show students' perceptions. This is based on the students' perception using a data-driven learning approach to teach English as a B-language and a translation study program. So let's say this is based on different authors, as you can see here. And before that, let's say I would like to give you some context of, let's say, the way that things work here in Chile in terms of translation education. Of course, like our native language here is Spanish. So let's say that's important to consider because, let's say, this monolingual context is part of, let's say, of our teaching, let's say, setting. So everybody speaks Spanish. So in that way, students have to develop their, let's say, B language skills and also C language skills at the same time, let's say, with their translation skills. So this is like a set of skills that they have to develop at the same time compared, for example, in the case of Europe or other countries where people speak, let's say, 2 or 3 languages at the same time. You know, like countries can be bilingual, sometimes trilingual. The other thing is, in terms of context, that let's say most teachers or most professors who work in translation education are language teachers, but they are not translators. So they have to, in a way, adapt their teaching methodologies to, let's say, to teach translators and not, for example, English teachers or some other people who would like to learn languages. So I think these 2 elements are really important to be considered. So there are 3 concepts that I would like to mention here that I'm going to be mentioning in this presentation. The first one, of course, is Corpora. Just basically, you know, an electronically stored searchable collection of texts. That's very important to consider, you know, a big collection of texts. So the idea would be that we can actually try to find some information in them. The second one, of course, is going to be DDL, which is the use of tools and techniques of corpus linguistics for second language learning. So we're going to be using some techniques and some, you know, some concepts, you know, like engrams, frequency, contrastive, and things like that. And the last one is task-based learning, you know, so of course here the focus is on tasks that will promote language learning. The idea would be to, let's say, have students perform or, let's say, motivating and relevant tasks for them in, you know, in language learning. But here the key, of course, element is going to be tasks. So why did we decide to use, let's say, DDL? For example, Boulder and Com 2017 have identified several advantages or affordances, let's say, for using DDL. The first one is going to be that DDL helps students identify the most frequent forms and meanings in a language. Here we can see, let's say, the concept of frequency, which is, let's say, very important. This is one of the most important elements when we are learning a language, you know, when students ask, teacher, what's the most, let's say, the most common form or the most frequent one. So DDL helps students identify these. The second thing would be that DDL promotes learning autonomy by having students explore the language. So here they can create their own tasks and, let's say, create their own questions. And in that way, they can try to answer a question based on, let's say, that language exploration can answer. And the last thing would be that, in a way, that DDL help learners to recognize the nature of language in context, you know, not in isolation, which sometimes can be a problem when you're, let's say, learning a language based on only a textbook. So here we can include the concept of authenticity, right? So the nature of a language in context is very important here. And the methodology. So how did we implement this DDL approach here into this course? So we based this into, or we included this into English language course unit. In total, there have been 68 participants. Let's say their English level ranges from B2 level to C1 level. Here we're talking about fifth-year BA translation students. So here in Chile, people usually, when they get a degree, a bachelor's degree, it lasts, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, compared to other countries, of course, which is a little, maybe it could be 3 years and a half. So that's why here we're talking about last year's students. And the approach that we used was task-based, because we decided to, let's say, create some different, let's say, projects for them. Let's say, to design the course, let's say we did this in 3 stages. The first one was the diagnosis, of course. The second one was the corpus generation, and the last one was the application and the evaluation of our approach. Let's say for the first stage, diagnosis, we used a Google form that we sent to all our students, and we wanted to gather information from 3 different areas. The first one was related to personal information, the years they have been learning English, etc. The second one would be TV series, the series that students really enjoyed watching, maybe on Netflix, on Amazon Prime, on YouTube, or any other platform. And the last one would be their perceptions on language teaching and learning. So we wanted to know some things related to, for example, what they thought was a good language teacher, a bad language teacher, a good language student, a bad language student, etc. And let's say in the second one, to generate the corpus, we've been doing this project, let's say, for a couple of years now. And of course, let's say last year we had to do it online. But the corpus that we have so far, we can, let's say, I can give you 3 pieces of information. The first one is that it's composed by 67 TV series. So we're talking about more than 3,000 scripts. And in total, let's say words, we're talking about 14 million words, more than 14 million words in total. So this is the corpus that we have as of 2020. We would like to expand that. So of course, this number is going to grow. And here, let's say, well, because we've been using Lawrence Anthony's Anconc, because of course it's freeware, and it's let's say we've been using that to give students access to, of course, the corpus and to this concordancer. And also because, as everybody knows, we had to do all the work online last year, so it was easy to share, and of course it's freeware, so that's, let's say, important to consider. And let's say the next part was, of course, the application. And here, how did we do this? We divided this into 3 different projects. So we had to cover, of course, let's say, contents of the course, like grammar, vocabulary, structures, and things like that. And then we had students, let's say, create a project. So this is what we call initiation. So in this case, let's say we introduce students to DDL work methodology, and it's completely guided by the teacher. In this case, it was guided by me. I had to show them the basic tools, let's say, different tools for the students, like different key concepts for them. So in this case, we were talking about frequency, word lists, using special characters for asterisk, concordance plot, etc. So it was for them to get used to the methodology. So this project, it was basically, so they had to talk to me, so I would, let's say, guide them to try to make them understand how this worked. Then we had to continue with some more content, the didactic unit, of course. And then we had them, let's say, create another project, another task-based, let's say, task here. Of course, so here we were talking about some tasks that allow, let's say, for partially guided searches. So in this case, it was guided by me and the learner. So let's say we could negotiate a few things. So now, let's say I was trying to give the learner more autonomy. So here, for example, in that case, they could still work with frequency. Now they could compare language varieties, because some shows were, for example, from the UK, some other shows were from Canada or the US. So they started using collocation, engrams, let's say, more complicated, little bit, let's say, more complex activities. And the last project, of course, we had to keep covering, let's say, some more content. And here in this part, they had to talk about in this project, which is the stage what we call automatization and self-management. Here, students had to create their own research task. Okay, so it was guided by the learner. Of course, they talked to me when they wanted some advice, but it was basically, they decided their own project, the question that they wanted to answer. So for example, here they compared, for example, genres, they compare language variety, spoken versus, let's say, written language, maybe some formal, or some, let's say, the trying to compare, for example, the language of I don't know, detective shows. So they were trying to create their own, let's say, research projects, of course. Let's say after the application and the evaluation of stage number 3, which is, let's say, the application of the course, we could, let's say, talk to our students and say, okay, so what did you think of this? Of course, how did we do this? We tried to group them into 3 different dimensions here. The first dimension was autonomy. The next one was motivation and language and grammar. So we asked them a set of questions, and of course we sent them another Google form. So we wanted to know what they thought. You know, we structured this in different types of questions, but let's say based on these 3 different dimensions. So, for example, what we wanted to know was, you know, one student said like that he or she no longer felt the need to depend on, let's say, on somebody. You know, so let's say because she was or he was able to find solutions by herself or by himself to do the activities well. So many students said that they felt more autonomous. So because we, in a way, not everything was controlled by the teacher. So that they could perform their own, let's say, research task, and also that they could, let's say, perform their own, let's say, queries. In terms of motivation, many students, let's say, said this, that it was an interesting and innovative way of approaching language and learning. Many people said that including, let's say, software was very interesting, and also that it was based on the TV series that they usually see. You know, so they knew some of the dialogues, they knew some of the characters, so sometimes they focused on just one person, or sometimes they just focused on an entire situation. And the last thing would be in terms of language and grammar use. So this one student said that they liked how this course worked, because in a way that this helped them understand several things about English grammar and language that they, in a way, tended to ignore. You know, so sometimes something as simple as what's the difference between, I don't know, smart, intelligent, and clever, you know, and what context were they used, like no one and nobody, or, you know, comparing different adjectives or comparing different adverbs. So sometimes we, like they said that, oh, they thought it was very simple, but it was much more complicated than that. So let's say, in a way, language and context, let's say, really helped them understand that. Let's say, well, just to conclude, let's say, in a way, let's say this methodology deepens students' knowledge of both English and grammar. I mean, this has been my experience after doing this for, I don't know, at least a couple of semesters. You know, because this raises language awareness. Of course, students now understand how language works, let's say, more, and also how English works regardless of its variety. The second thing would be that students feel more autonomous. They develop linguistic competence, and of course, since they have to create their research tasks, in a way, also they have to investigate language. So they have to do some, let's say, research. So that's why they have to develop that. And let's say the corpus and the software allowed students to be more knowledgeable about frequency and English varieties. So like I said before, one of the key concepts in DDL is frequency. So let's say, of course, that's not the only answer, let's say, to choose maybe one word or one structure, but it also tells you something about, let's say, how English works. And of course, the last thing would be that the DDL methodology used in class helps students be more aware of how English works and their own learning. I think, yeah, I've been mentioning the idea of how English works, but also how they learn, you know, that how they have been learning English and how they can include this tool in the future, as, you know, when they're going to be working as translators, of course. So this is something, let's say, very, very important. And let's say, what we would like to do in the future and how we would like to apply this DDL approach. The first thing would be to expand the scope of the corpus. So we've been using, let's say, TV series. Now we're creating a corpus based on academic papers only. So we would like to, let's say, expand that, you know, so we would like to include some more different genres, of course. The other thing would be, we would like to explore the use of DDL in other course units with a more varied number of tasks. We've been doing this. We've been, besides English language courses, there are also some grammar courses. I teach a course called Descriptive English Grammar. So we've been using DDL there as well. And the last thing would be, let's say, lots of teachers say that they would like to know about the DDL, let's say, approach, but let's say this requires time and training, even though it's not that difficult to use. But let's say at the beginning, I mentioned that most professors or teachers who are teaching in translation studying programs are language teachers, and so they are not translators. So let's say we would like to, let's say, include, or let's say try to foster some teacher development workshops based on this approach. Yeah, so yeah, thank you for your attention. And Larissa said, yeah, of course, we belong to Universidad Santiago de Chile. So this project is something that we've been doing for, let's say, some time. And there is also paper forthcoming that's going to be published soon. So we're also working on this research, and we've been working on this for a long time. So if you would like to contact us, or if you'd like to contact me, that's my email address, of course. If you have any questions, or if there is something that you would like that we can share.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jose Luis. Yes, now we have some minutes. If you have any comments, questions, you're welcome. Chat? No chat. No? You're so clear, everything clear.
Okay, very, very good then. Yeah, I mean, this has been I'd say an experience, and also
very didactic abilities, great didactic abilities. Yeah.
Well, that's why yeah. I mean, the idea would be, was to be as clear as possible, and also, let's say, using this, and students really appreciate the fact that they can use TV series, so like the ones that they the ones that they usually watch, and they picked. I mean, of course, now the most famous one was the one related to crime. So crime has been there, let's say, using like the ones related to crime solving or detective work. I think those are the most famous ones. So everybody picked, and there were some very interesting research questions, like the language of detective shows, for example, murder, killing, or slaughter, or like manslaughter, or assassination, and things like that. So I think, yeah, some very interesting products, let's say, have been shown, and the next step would be to use academic paper. So we're creating the
you have a lot
corpus.
of work. Yeah, you have a lot of tasks, a lot of work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And now, Jose Luis, now I will pause the. Okay. Now the last presentation of this panel, and this presentation is by Yang Jialih.
Yes.
Yeah, from Praxilin, and is entitled Variation culturelle dans les comportements de digression thématique lors de la réunion client-fournisseur, une étude contrastive en français et en chinois.
Oui, parfaitement. Merci. Good day. My name is Yang Jialih. Today, my subject of presentation is cultural variation in topic change behavior during buyer and supplier meetings. This is a constructive study in Chinese and in French. And those interaction are all authentic meetings, which occurred. 2 are in France and 2 are in Taiwan. That means all of them are native speakers. And right now, this is my plan of presentation. First one, I want to mention about methodology. It's based on transcription research. Secondly, I want to, before conducting a business meeting, which between supplier and buyer, what the context we should know, their relationship and what they are looking for in a meeting. And third one, what how and where how and when to perceive topic changes in conversation. And the fourth one is the founding of my research. And the fifth one is about implication of topic change and its application in the future. And right now, I just, like I mentioned before, this is authentic business meetings. So they are all native speaker. My objective is to compare their communicative style in the topic changes. This is my main objective. And how to I generate my corpus, because there are 4 meetings. I cannot transcribe all of the total duration of the meeting. That's why there are 3 criteria to select utterance. 3 criteria. The first one is maximum purpose of the business meeting. That means each role bio supplier, they have professional activities to carry out. And the second one is about the move of the speaker. What is move? Move means a sequential organization of action or reaction in a discourse. And third criteria is about aspect of specialty of French grammar, our specialty of Chinese grammar, and also some parable elements. The parable like smile, which happened during the conversation, or like a pose. And these are all the criteria to select utterance. And right now we have to know what the relationship between the buyer and supplier. We will think, oh, they are partnership. Are they in the horizontal? Horizontal means equity relationship. No, and even in Asia, we think the client is the king. So are they in the vertical communication? Actually, they are in antagonistic relationship, which means they have conflict of the interest. Why? Because seller want to say higher price, and the buyer want to have a lower price, and each of their objective is to get seek the growth of business in their own price, their own enterprise. That's why they have a conflict of interest, but they also have to cooperate together. If not, they cannot seek for their own proper growth of business. That's why they are situated in the conflict versus cooperation. And what they are doing in the interaction of meeting. Actually, what they are mainly they are collecting information of opposing party, and they have to transmit their own information. Let the other opposing party to get the information. Then either both one of them have to assess above 2 information to make a decision if they are going to have a transaction or not. And therefore, each meeting is a business negotiation on different subjects like price, quantity of product, spec, etc. Now we understand the context of a business meeting. Now we have to define what is the topic and how to define topic change in my studies. Okay, topic is object or an activity is identified in conversation. Or we can say it's a set of a psychological or cognitive focus in conversation. And how can we perceive these topic changes? Okay, we, like I said, maybe there's a pause during the speaking, or smile, or some intonation placed in a specific lexical unit. Or you can have a discourse marker, like in English is so, or in French is may, or like fatigue expression. You can have small talk, and you just change your topic, or you just have this act abruptly. So this is the research based on the other researcher give some indicator about how to locate the topic changes. And now we talk about why the speaker want to change the topic. According to Maillard, he said it can be a reference to the setting of the speaking, or just kind of a speaker to want to invite, or just want to have a change of topic, or it can be considered as an implicit disagreement of a topic mentioned by speaker one, or it's just a reaction, the reaction of speaker two. He just talk about his interlocutor. You are not listening, so I have to change the topic. So there are so many reasons, and so now we see the topic change. They have very dual characteristics. First of all, pick and change the topic, whatever you like. So it's a context freeness, but also he is a context sensibility. Why? Because he changed the topic, because the topic speak by speaker one is sensitive to him, to the speaker two. Now I have to define what is we call about the topic changes in business meeting. This is the content generated by the speaker two is not relevant to the content of the speaker one, or he's not related to the basic purpose of business meeting. So it's nothing to do with the business meeting, or it's nothing to do with the content of speaker one. Why? Because this is related about the transmission of information. Because we are in a conflict relationship, some of information we should not deliver to our partner, because this is to protect our own business. So once we touch these informations, the speaker two have to do this act, like topic change. And now I just want to show you in two languages when and how, in which situation the speaker two change the topic. Now I just want to show you in first one is in French language. French, the person, like he said, in France, where in conversation we afraid of the vide, the silence. Therefore, during the two turns, speak one, speak two, there's a silence. Then this silence, compels speaker two to change the topic, totally different from the speaker one. The one speak from totally different from the one of speaker one. Okay, just show you this example. We have this 3.1 there's 3 seconds of silence. Then the speaker two change the topic, and this is only 1 second. Then speak two change the topic. Or this is kind of self-defense act for the speak to change the topic. This kind of act is related to discuss the sensitive information. For example, I just show you this example two. This F is a supplier, fournisseur. A is actually is a buyer. Then the fournisseur supplier mentioned that, okay, I'm trying to cut some price for you. Maybe just can meet your need. How do you think? A better price. Then the buyer saying, perhaps we plan to eat together, right? He just changed the topic. Why? Because he don't want to touch this sensitive information, which is his decision should be met at this moment or not. So this is self-defense act for speak two. The same act applied into Chinese as well. That when the A again, A means actually the client, F means supplier. Client asking something about the information of his competitor, which is the client to the supplier. That means it's quite complicated. So this client, current client, want to get information of a competitor, which is the client of this supplier. Like the supplier doesn't want to give this information, so he continue his subject without changing. That means this kind of action is self-defense for the speaker two, because he don't want to change the subject which is carried by the speaker one. Or in Chinese business meeting, is you can change the subject. Why? It's deliberately to change the subject to self-praising yourself. For example, this is example two. Is this supplier is saying, like my mom, she just came back from Japan, had some misadventure. This a little of topic beyond, of course, because his mother doesn't listen to this business meeting. But why is to do so? Of course, he wants to relax the tension of buyer and supplier. He knows this is we are in situation a conflict relation. So we try to make some joke to abase this ease the tension between both parties. Why? Objective to get a potential transaction. And I give you two examples. These two examples happen in different meetings, but they are doing the same thing. They're trying to make some jokes, I mean, self-praising to himself, and to get some funny atmosphere to wish to have a business in future. And right now, this is my conclusion. Like the first presentation, he mentioned that when we go abroad, there's a much dimension to think about what is this. This is going abroad, going to improve our writing. The same topic change. You have to think about lots of dimensions, like structural conversation. Like I mentioned, there's a pose, there's a smile, or there's some or some emphatic expression. Or we have to think about the content of conversation. Like, I mean, the content is not relevant. Or is we also have to think of internal relationship, because if we are in a horizontal relationship, acquaintance or not acquaintance, you have a different strategy to approach this topic shift. Or we have a cultural difference. This is my reason I present my my study. And what I'm looking for in the future, because if we know when the speaker want to change the topic, he has some intentions. So this we can improve our rhetorical and negotiation ability in business. Furthermore, as we know, there's a difference. Like French are afraid of silence, but in Asia, people we are acquaintance of silence. And if the French businessman come to Asia, suddenly too much silence for him is unbearable. But he doesn't understand this is our Chinese culture as well. As Chinese people are going to France, if suddenly there's a silence, then the speaker changes his subject. Then he said, "What's going on?" So this is a misunderstanding in two cultures. So this study can improve the intercultural scale in different discursive communities. This is my presentation, and thanks for your listening.
Thank you, Jialih. Thank you very much for your interesting presentation. Yes, I think this kind of descriptive studies is absolutely crucial for cross-cultural research. So if you have any questions, now we have 2-3 minutes. Any question? Any comments? I thought your presentation was in French.
Yes, no, I just think this not everyone can understand French. That's why I'm adopting the local culture, and I have to do the culture. Yes, I mean, for everyone can understand what I'm presenting.
Okay. Thank you. No questions? No comment? Nothing? Very interesting. Yeah, very interesting study. So I will stop this. Thank you very much to everybody.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for your presentation.